Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of the Capable Minds podcast. Today we have Shaz Ahmed, property finance specialist, sharing his amazing journey and the do's and don'ts of property finance. As always, please like, share and subscribe to our channel to help us grow. And before we get started, ask yourself one question. What makes you capable?
Capable Minds podcast.
Shaz,
James.
thank you very much for coming in to speak to us today on the Capable Minds podcast. So if we can just start by giving the audience a bit of a background about you, what your name is, what you do, and yeah, just give us a brief description.
Yeah, sure. Finally, we did it.
I know.
Over a year in the making. So my name's Shaz. I'm a mortgage broker. That's the easy part. I think what I do differently is I put a lot of content on social media to help people, I guess, make wiser decisions when it comes to mortgages and finance.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But where do you think it all started for you in terms of getting into property? Like what kind of sparked your interest initially?
Yeah.
Before making this business?
It's a weird one, James. If people say, am I passionate about property or finance? The answer is probably not. But what I like doing is helping people.
Yeah.
So I've got qualified to be a mortgage broker. You have to have a qualification. Through that, I was like, okay, well, how can I use this to help people in a way that obviously benefits me, but also benefits them? So when people say what's like your key driver, what makes you want to do things, it's helping people get in that feedback loop. You know, you've been great, you've been helpful, I've heard about you.
Yeah.
So that recognition is what I do it for. But ultimately, I was working for Barclays back in the day, but that was really kind of boring residential mortgages.
I can imagine.
Proper, like, viciously mediocre. Do you know what I mean? I had no real ambition.
Yeah.
And then they made us redundant. Took all the jobs to Liverpool as well, not even abroad, in Liverpool. Then we had gardening leave.
Yeah.
And I set up a burger restaurant actually back then. So I set up a little restaurant in Newport, it's still there.
Yeah.
I went back into mortgages in a more of a specialist kind of space, but I wasn't very good for the first 12 months, and I got sacked. But then I realised, look, I like it. I've learned as much as I can learn, but I don't want to be in another job again. That's not going to work, and that's when I went self-employed.
I love the saying, and Mary will vouch for me here, I always say fail fast.
Yeah.
So the fact that you said you went and done that job and got sacked from it, from the very beginning, you had that failure, and then that's kind of propelled you into where you are today.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think the way I looked at it then was, yes, I got sacked, but ultimately, what's the worst that could happen? I can move back to my parents. Yeah. They're not going to kick me out.
Yeah,
so that was the worst it could be. You can only get better from there.
And what were the sort of inspirations that you had in this sort of industry? Did you read any books, or were you, was there anyone you kind of looked up to within this industry that kind of gave you the inspiration?
It's a good question. I think it wasn't maybe specifically in the mortgage industry or finance, but around the time I got sacked and was regrouping and thinking, what am I doing next? You know, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook was kind of happening. People were building their brands, and I was seeing people building their brands and how they were doing it. And I can see the people who were doing it badly versus what good looks like, and I can see what I would want to model myself on, but also what felt genuine to me. Yeah. And I think I just went with it and went all in.
That's amazing. In the business, so the Elan Property
Finance.
Finance. Yeah. From that business, I know you said you opened a burger shop before. Was the burger shop, was that the first business you had? And what would you say are the key sort of things you learned from that you took into Elan Property Finance?
So I've had little side hustles before. I did a graphic design business, but that was just more as a hobby to make some money. Yes, the burger restaurant was my first real thing. And that was, again, it wasn't intentional. My brother-in-law, he's got loads of businesses, loads of food businesses. Yeah. I had money because of the gardening leave. So I gave him the idea, and he's like, well, if we're doing it, you're going to do it with me because you're doing nothing right now, and you got money, so let's partner up. Didn't really have a choice. So I think what I learned was or at least for me, I wanted to do, or at least know how to do every part of the business. Yeah, of course. Whether it's cooking, washing the pots and pans, being a waiter, ordering, stock keeping, all that kind of stuff. I wanted to at least have a knowledge of that, because if I was going to push my staff, I'd never want them to come back and say, well, you try and do it. Yeah. I'd be like, yeah, I did, or I have. Do you know what I mean? So that was the main thing I learned from that. But also, people come first. Customers never always right. You got to make them think they are. Yeah. But they're not always right.
You're the first one to say that to me, actually. That's so funny. So Elan Property Finance, where did the name Elan come from? Like, where was your, did it take you, because a lot of people go through like a iteration process where they come up with the name, oh, actually, you can't do that, it's taken, or like, where did that come from?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah.
There's a cafe in London at ELN.
Oh, right. That's where you came from.
Yes and no, right?
Yeah.
I was frequenting that joint a lot,
Yeah.
and the name sounded cool. But then I worked backwards. And what does that mean? What does Elan mean? So it means enthusiasm, movement, forward thinking.
Okay.
And it made sense.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So yeah, the name kind of came from the cafe, but then it means a lot of things which actually link there anyway.
Of course. It's nice to take inspiration from other things anyway.
Yeah.
Because no matter where we're going.
No, sorry, no one's asked me that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I always ask people that. Yeah, no matter where we are, like on a day-to-day basis, I think there's inspiration everywhere. So like no matter where, you could be going for a walk or taking your dog out or whatever, or in the gym, there's always something to, you know, pique your interest or feel inspired by, whether it's someone working hard or a name of something.
Well, I mean, what do you think? You said about names. So I think some people spend too much time on names.
Yeah.
Coke means nothing, Pepsi means nothing. It's the branding around it and how you make people think. So I didn't want to spend too long on a name. I could have called it Shaz Mortgages or whatever.
They do say a lot of like selling stuff is not specifically the product. Obviously it comes into it a lot, but they say it's the way you can make people feel from the experience and, you know, the whole the experience basically from all of it. It's not exactly the brand in itself and the clothing itself. This episode is brought to you by Envio Apparel, an activewear and lifestyle brand, and you can get 15% off your whole order with code CapableMinds15. Check out envioapparel.com or on socials, Envio Official. Let's get back to the podcast. What would you say are the most important things that you can provide your clients within Elan Property Finance? Why would they come to you over someone else?
Great question. So I think a lot of it is one, I'm not an order taker or an order processor. So if someone came to me and said, I want this, it's not going to happen like that. We work with them to look at strategy. What's your plans now, in the next 5 years, next 10 years? Do you want to build a property portfolio and treat it like a business? Well, this is what you have to do. So yeah, we don't just take orders and process them. If you want to do that, you go somewhere else and, you know, work with them. And also it's a lot about like relationships. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years, as we spoke earlier, like traveling the whole UK, building relationships with lenders, with other brokers, which we can tap into if we need to. If someone needs a favour or just something kind of, if someone's outside policy, we got to bend it a little bit. We can do it because we've built that leverage in. So relationships, strategy building, and also thinking outside the box and being creative. Like I don't do residential mortgages because they're quite cookie cutter and vanilla. We look at specialist finance, so buy-to-lets, investments, which is not something Lloyds Bank or Halifax or anyone do. It's more specialist lenders.
Yeah. And how important would you say like networking is? I know you said you travelled all over the UK and far and wide. So how important would you say networking is as your business have grown? It's
a journey, man. I think when I went self-employed, I had no clients. I had no brand, I had no business, I had no hope, obviously, but I went all in. So I went to every event locally, but also around Midlands and London way, and that's where like the Instagram name, Where's Shaz, comes from. And I think it's hindsight. You've got to network with intention, with a bit of intention. What are you there for? How can you help people? How can you be valuable? It's no good like just trying to leech off people. You know, like they say, there's a saying, you know, if you hang around millionaires, you'll be the next millionaire. It doesn't happen like that. You've got to provide some value to them for them to want to work with you, spend time with you. So figure out what your value proposition is and how can you present that in a way that makes sense to those people. Also, so I think it's not about selling. I walk into rooms with no intention of working with people, but just answering questions if they want to or just helping them out. But yeah, networking is important. You don't know who you're going to meet, but you also have to be smart. So I would say half the events I go to now are in the industry, but the rest are non-finance related because then you're the only person that does what you do.
I see,
And you've got to pick a role as well. Like I used to be like the connector, so I'd be like, I know someone who knows someone who could help each and connect people together because then people think you're big time.
And the thing that you said about the 5 million is, they're not just going to bring you into that circle. You almost got to provide like something that you're bringing in that's going to benefit them also. They're not just going to bring you into that circle, you know?
Yes, it's a weird one because people often say, don't work for free, value your time. But you can say that once you've got something of value. So, like, I'll give a really quick example. Recently, I was at an event and this guy was there and he's like a photographer for property photography. And he's showing me these listings that someone's put on Airbnb. He's like, Shaz, these photos are horrible. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to message this guy and just say I can do better photos. I was like, no, why don't you book the property, stay there for a night, then take some pictures of his property for free.
That's a sick idea.
Then send them over to him because he'd be way more impressed. He'll give you the rest of his properties. So you've got to do the extra bit.
I think I like that. So the details of property finance, Do you think it's kind of like a tough subject to get across? So I feel like including myself, I don't know much about it in terms of like my personal knowledge. So do you find, maybe especially with the younger generation, trying to get that information across, do you find it quite hard?
Yes and no. Like, they don't teach how to buy a house in school.
Yeah.
People don't know how many people are actually involved, how long it takes, the money you need, the fees, all the fees that are involved. But to actually explain to people, I think if someone's motivated to know about a certain thing, they'll find out. Especially now with ChatGPT and Google in general. But yeah, I think people say finance is quite boring. So I guess part of what I do is to make it a bit more accessible, a bit more relatable. Yeah. So I don't find it hard now. I guess I did when I started though.
Yeah. Because the thing is, with the younger generation, you're not really going to know about property or investments until you maybe do a course or you buy your first home. And
then it's late. It's too late. I think whenever you're trying to buy a house or any property, you should probably plan 6 months before. Yeah. But start saving your deposit, keep your bank statements clean, check your credit, all that stuff 6 months beforehand. Yeah. If you do it at the time, it's too late.
And when it comes to people coming to you for guidance, what sort of age range are we talking? Do you get people who are younger as well as older?
Yeah, I get a lot of younger people. I think because I get my leads or clients from social media, because they're obviously slightly younger generation, so they are a lot younger, maybe just finished uni or done a course like you said. Yeah. A lot of people, right, are happy to spend £25,000 on a course and actually put a deposit down for a house. So yeah, done a course, got no money, got no assets, they're going to borrow money from someone else and they want to start investing. So that's what I normally get.
I find that crazy that people would rather spend that much money on a course. Because I had someone on previously who was into property as well, and he said he wasted so much money on courses before he actually got started. Yeah. And if he went back, he said he would do it all on YouTube.
100%.
For free,
100%.
And then he would start the business.
Yeah, and people don't realise, it sounds weird me saying it because I do the finance, but you don't have to buy a house to invest in property. Yeah. You could do like rent to rent, where you manage someone else's property, keep the profit, give them a fixed rent. So there's so many different strategies. And yeah, YouTube, ChatGPT, all that stuff exists. Or like you said, networking events. Yeah. Go speak to people.
Exactly. So in 2025, how do you see the market changing, if at all? Like, how do you see this year going now for property investment?
I think, I'm not an economist, but I think the Bank of England base rate will slowly go down by the end of the year. I think they've got at least three more reviews. Yeah. So it'll probably go down, but depends what happens in politics as well, because every time there's a change in that, it affects confidence in this market. But in general, James, it's hard to buy a house. Hard to save a deposit.
Very hard.
And if you want to stay where your family are, and the house prices there are higher, then it's hard there, and house prices keep going up and up and up. So I think it's definitely getting harder to buy your first property. But again, people need to realise that the first house you buy isn't rarely your forever house. So you might want to buy a fixer-upper that you can do up, add value to it, and in 2 years refinance, get your money back, and you've got a bigger pot of cash then.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to be doing that these days. You mentioned obviously that it's getting harder for people to buy property, but what about, do you see any good things changing this year? Obviously you said about the interest rates, but is there anything else that you think is going to benefit us?
When you say us, I guess people who want to buy the houses to live in, right? Yeah. I mean, there's always government schemes, because ultimately the government wants people to have houses. It's not as if they want you to stay in, with your parents or rent. It's just accessing that money. And people again need to realise that banks, they don't make money unless they lend you the money. Yeah. So it's in their interest to give the money out. But there has to be a kind of happy medium. House prices have to go down to get the demand in. Yeah. I think a lot of government schemes will probably come in. Yeah. And if they don't, I can see a lot of the banks putting their own schemes in place, or new build developers. So new developers, what they can say is, look, we've got these new units, we'll give you a 5% discount, free furniture, and if you just take our offers. Yeah. So there'll be some ways in.
Yeah, so our generation struggle with property, as you said. Why do you think the economy over those past 30 years, would you say, that 30-year period, why is the gap from the average salary and the house price gone from there to there?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what's happened, right? Various things, maybe a topic for a different conversation, but things like inflation and recession, and Gary Stevenson talks about wealth inequality, where the really rich people, they're kind of hoarding assets. They're just buying lots of property, buying lots of land, not really, you wouldn't say they haven't earned that money because they haven't the money to buy the asset, but they're just hoarding it which means the people lower down the scale, they're getting poorer and poorer.
Yeah.
The value of the pound is not the same as it was before.
Sure.
And there's that gap. So I think, especially in the UK, like middle class is not existing anymore. You're either lower class or you're super rich.
Yeah. One thing that does annoy me, obviously, I'm yet to buy my house.
Yeah.
And I'm 32 years old. But being like within a gym where you see a lot of people, quite often you see the older generation say, "Oh, I saved all my money. Like you can buy a house. Like blah blah blah." It's almost like they put you down for not being able to get into any sort of property, whether that's investing or buying a house or whatever it might be. And they say they worked their ass off when they were younger. They saved their money, blah, 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 blah. But what they don't understand is that difference in the salary to...
The average salary back then was worth a lot more than it is now. And house prices weren't as grown as bad as they are now.
Crazy. I think, the older generation could be a bit ignorant, shall I say.
Ignorant, or perhaps, I guess, their argument would be that they've worked so hard and they've got these assets they're going to give to their kids. And like you said, people now are buying their first house a lot later on. Yeah. Before, when I was at school, up to about 20, up to 25 at latest, you have to have your own property. But now 30, 35, you stay at your parents or rent because you just can't afford it. It's not as if you don't want to, you're being lazy, you just can't afford it. Yeah. And for people who want to get into like investment properties, what would you say would you say it's like, should you just get into it or should you wait for like the right time in terms of like timings and stuff? You can never time the market. That's the first thing. You can never time the market. I think first thing is figure out your strategy. Do you want monthly cash flow or do you want an asset that grows in value over 10, 15, 20 years? Can you wait that long for it to go up in value? Because if you buy like a single let property for like a standard family or whatever, you're going to make, after all the fees and everything and your mortgage, 100 quid a month, 200 pound a month. Is it worth it to make 200 pound a month for in 20 years for it to be worth something? Or do you want to make a lot of money now by doing like rent to rents, Airbnb or multiple HMOs, which is like house shares and stuff?
One of my clients is, I'm a PT, so one of my clients in the gym, he's like one of my he's become like a close friend now actually, but he's come into like a bit of money and he has said that with that money he wants to invest in property. So he's actually keen for me to ask you some questions and see like if it can help him. So if he's come into like a bit of money, he wants to invest in property with his friends, set up like a holdings
like
company.
A limited company.
A limited company, sorry. And then from that, what would you say the best course of action would be for, let's say they got a few $100,000. What would you say the best course of action would be from there?
So first of all, with a limited company, the reason people do that is to limit then their exposure to risk. So if it's two of you on there, then you're 50% liable for what goes on. So that's the first thing. It's a wrapper. In terms of what they want to do, if they got a couple £100,000, they could invest in the valleys. They could buy a whole street in the valleys, right? Or they could maybe like flip a property. So buy something maybe in London, which is a bit more expensive, do it up and sell it because house prices in London are always generally higher. Then go up north. Smaller value properties, 70, 80,000 pounds, do them up, sell them on, or refinance and keep them. The most popular strategy, or two things that are really popular right now. One is called BRR, which stands for buy, refurbish, refinance. So in theory, you buy the worst house on the street, spend money on it to add some value, make it the best house on the street, and you refinance to pull as much of your money back out as possible, and you go again. It was doable a couple of years ago, but now getting all your money back out is quite hard. But you should be able to get back most of your deposit. So people then say, well, I've got a free house now. Because in theory, if you put nothing in, because you got all your money back out, it's a free property. So that's popular, but the numbers have to work. Or people are doing like HMOs. So that's when you have like a 6-bedroom house and you give individual rooms rent. So you might charge £300 per room. Suddenly you've got 6 lots of income coming in. Sounds great, but then it's 6 lots of issues, 6 lots of tenants. Oh, took my food from the fridge, this kind of thing. But that's very popular, especially student areas. Or if you've got like NHS or hospital nearby, you get professionals in there. You see the high streets, obviously a lot of shops are closing, a lot of banks are closing, a lot of offices are closing. You can now convert offices into houses or flats quite easily. That's quite popular as well. So
I think what he was saying was, you mentioned a couple of times, like a small block of flats, like within Cardiff city centre. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's good. Again, just look at the building regulations, get an architect involved. because if they're already built, if it's already a block of flats, if it's already built and it's already there, can you add more value to it? I think that's the main thing. What investors want to do is add further value.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got your full-time investors who will always look for a bargain and where they can add value, or you've got maybe your kind of armchair or side hustle investors where it's like, I just want to buy a ready-made block of flats. For me, I'd say the money is in being a full-time investor, buy something that's below market value because you can add further value to it.
So potentially they would go to you to broker that deal, and then how would that work after that then?
So yeah, they would say, Shaz, we found this block of flats, here's
Yeah.
the address, here's the figures,
Yeah.
you know, what do you want to do? We would look at funding, whether it's a bridging loan, which is short-term finance, they can buy it, maybe demolish it and rebuild it, or retidy it all up. Or if it is ready-made, fully tenanted, just go straight into a mortgage for that block of flats.
Yeah, nice. I'll tell them to contact you.
Yeah.
Where's Shaz? So what are your thoughts on like celebrities coming out and saying, like Grant Cardone and all that sort of thing, saying like not to buy properties, just rent instead, like whether that's commercial or domestic.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying there's no need to buy, you can just rent and then you have more freedom. What are your thoughts on that?
I see both sides. I think if it's your own house that you're living in, then people say like, pay off your mortgage, and that's a good idea. But actually, if you've got this house that you're living in, it's still an asset. Make it an asset by borrowing against it, using that money to make more money.
Yeah, because you can
That
kind of
makes
leverage.
complete sense. Yeah, leverage.
Yeah.
Leverage is the most important thing. So you've got your house, take money out of it. As long as you can use it to make more money, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
There's a lot of push for footballers to actually start investing early, because what a lot of them don't realise is, you're getting paid 50 grand a week, but that's probably until you're 37, 38,
Short career.
39, 40 tops.
Yeah.
What you can do afterwards, and there's that big drop in income, right? So there are schemes to help footballers get into property or just any kind of investing.
Yeah.
But yeah, people say don't buy houses or don't buy any assets. I think that's a bit short-sighted. If you're in a position where you can invest, you definitely should. It's just in the right assets, and figure out what your strategy is. That's a really important thing.
Yeah, because obviously you might be tied into like a 30-year mortgage. So that's quite scary. Like I haven't bought a house yet, so in terms of my personal opinion, that's quite scary, being locked into that mortgage for 30 years of my life.
Okay, but I mean, I suppose 30 years of your life, but you're paying it down.
Yeah.
Potentially, if you have children, for example, it's something you can give to them as an inheritance thing, and there's tax benefits doing it that way rather than giving them cash.
Yeah.
And it's an asset. If you leverage off it, it's a good asset. Otherwise, rent.
I wanted to ask you, when it comes to like my personal situation, say I got some money in the bank ready to buy a house, like when we're ready, I'm thinking, do I need to buy a house? Because I don't really need to. I can afford to like keep renting and then invest that money in property with yourself, for example.
Yeah.
And then it's essentially another business, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is you don't need to own a house to have a home. Like you could be a good tenant, have a good landlord and stay there forever, and it's your home. And then if that money you've got as a deposit, if that could be used to make you more money, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Plus also you could do it short term. For example, if you started to look for a house now, it'd probably still take 6 to 9 months to look for all the houses, do all the viewings, find what you like, then buy the house, So actually, if that deposit could be deployed in a project that takes 6 to 9 months, maybe a flip where you buy it, add value and sell it, you can get your money back and then some, and you buy a better house.
Makes sense. It's definitely something to think about. When people come to you for advice or they want to get into property investment, what are sort of the green flags that you would look for, and also the red flags that would make you think, okay, I don't want to work with this person, or you got no chance of getting the finance?
I think one thing that maybe people need to be a lot more is just transparent around, especially around their credit. So if you've got CCJs, if you've got bad credit in general, like missed payments, late payments, you've got that. Honestly, no matter what anyone says, when you've got bad credit, okay? Just tell your broker, because your broker I'm not the mortgage police, I'm there to represent you. Yeah. And so if I know what's going on in the whole scenario, I can position you still in the best way possible. Yeah. What looks a lot worse is you don't tell me what you've got. We put you in with a lender and they come back and say, by the way, we've noticed X, Y, and Z. Can you explain that? If we explain it ahead of time, it just looks a lot better. Yeah. So that's a major red flag, is like when you don't disclose everything that's relevant. Yeah. I always say to people, like, tell me the unusual stuff first. Tell me the weird and wonderful, and then we'll work backwards off it. Next thing is bank statements. So you could have the money. You said you've got money for your deposit, yeah? But if I ask you where you got that money from, can you prove it? If you suddenly start going, no, I can't, or why are you asking these questions, that's a major red flag. Lenders need to know, one, proof of funds. Do you have the money? More importantly, source of funds. Where's that money come from? So if it's like savings over 6 months, great. Show me your savings bank statement. Cool. But if it will be like your last 3 months, you've got these suddenly 10 grand coming in from someone, 15 grand from someone else.
Yeah.
It's not a red flag per se, but it's a case of where has that come from? If you've got gifts from family, great. Your uncle's giving you 20 grand. Where's he got his money from? Solicitors will have to check. Yeah. It's not even me. I mean, solicitors have to check.
Yeah.
It's fancy money laundering.
Yeah.
And I think I generally don't want to work with people who are dishonest.
Yeah, of course.
So if we mentioned limited companies earlier, you're working with a business partner in a company together. If obviously through our conversations you're telling me one thing and you're telling them the same thing, I would probably be like, look, best I don't want to work with you because it's not worth risking. Anyone who wants me to bend the rules, not going to happen.
Yeah.
There's enough clients out there, enough brokers out there, just do the right thing.
Yeah, because it's got to be transparent on all sides, really.
Yeah, and I think it's just realising we're working on your agenda for you. Ultimately, we don't get paid until the deal completes.
Yeah.
So it's in everyone's best interest to make that happen, and we don't want to work for free. We don't want to work for no reason.
Of course. So clean bank statements, and a clear path of where the funds initially have come from.
Yeah, the source of funds also credit. And we were speaking earlier about CCJs, just to kind of highlight. Like, when people say to me about CCJs, usually it's parking fines and parking tickets. Yeah. Because parking fines, people say, ignore them, they can't do anything about it. Kind of true, but there is a process to follow. So if, say, they follow a process off gov.uk, it's so easy. Yeah. You have to send a letter of intent and then 2 further letters, and then you can get a CCJ put on. If you get a CCJ put on, but you pay it within 30 days of it being put on your file, it doesn't get applied to your record. So you have all that time for it not to happen. But once it's on there, it's there for 6 years. So when people come to me and say, yeah, that CCJ wasn't my fault, sent a letter to the wrong address, but it's an issue, I don't have any much sympathy because you've had all this time previously and you had 30 days on top of that to sort it out.
Of course. So let's talk a bit more about Elan then.
Yeah. The coffee shop.
The coffee shop, no. Elan Property Finance. Yeah. So you've been nominated for many awards and won many awards for your brokering services. So how does that make you feel to be get that recognition from the wider public and these awards companies who are handing out these awards?
It's good. You know what it is? Being a small company in Wales. Yeah. It's good to be in the mix with all these big companies in London. I've been told by judges, look, Shaz, you're probably not going to win a lot of these. Yeah. Like, oh, why? They're like, look, your submissions are fine, what you put is fine, but ultimately it's a numbers game. Because in London, the average deal size is in the millions. In Wales, it's maybe a couple £100,000 at most. So you won't win the numbers game, but it's good to be in the mix with these massive firms. And that's it. It's a lot of publicity, a lot of brand. Yeah. And it gets me in rooms where I normally wouldn't be. Yeah. Do you want to know an inside secret? Go on. You know with my award submissions, because you've got to self-submit. Yeah. I use AI. I'll go on ChatGPT. Yeah. I'll put in, this is what the award is, this is what the category is, this is what the question is, this is what they're looking for. These are my bullet points. Off you go.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's not cheating because obviously I tell it what I want it to say, but I just need to elaborate on a few points.
And it's what you've literally
It's what my achievements are, yeah. But I think everyone should put themselves up for awards because for me it also acts as a reminder of the year just gone. Yeah. What have I achieved in the year just gone? Often you forget. In business you're too busy to sit down and reflect. But if it's for an awards or anything similar, it's like a look back at the last year, this is what I've done, and actually, I've done well.
Yeah, class. No, congratulations. So your personal brand is great. We're Shaz on Instagram. And I love the way that you get your information across in a way that's easily digestible for us to watch and listen to. How important do you think it is to have a personal brand alongside your obviously successful business?
I think it's super important, especially now in 2025 that we're in, because people buy from people. Yeah. They buy from people they know, like, and trust. Ultimately, we're all in the sales game in one way or another, and it gives you a different edge. Yeah. I always think that there could be 4 or 5 other mortgage brokers. We could be delivering the same message, but someone will connect with someone differently. Yeah. So. And there's enough to go around, ultimately, right? Of course. So your personal brand just needs to be leaning on the weird and wonderful stuff that you do. Yeah. What makes you unique, and do more of that. So I think it's super important. And again, it's got me to places, podcasts, events, speaking things that I wouldn't normally have thought about.
And from your social media presence, have you found that you've gotten many inquiries? I'm guessing you have. Many inquiries off the back of being so active on socials?
100%. So I don't buy leads. My website is very basic.
Yeah.
All of my business is organic through.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's never just one thing. So it's not just the social media. It'll be a case of I saw you on this podcast and I met you at an event, or I met you at an event and I saw you social media. Like, it's always 2 or 3 things together, which is great.
Sick.
Because they want to work with me. I'm not trying to chase them for business. And also by that point, half the job is done in terms of the lead generation and sales.
Yeah.
So people are reaching into me,
Class. Yeah. I think people should do more of it. Anyone who has a business, I think they should be active on socials, because they say if you post every day, maybe not every day, but people say that the more you post, you know, there's eyes on you all the time.
Yeah, there's 2 points on that. One is I think there is definitely a skill to being omnipresent.
Yeah.
So when I go to events, I was at London yesterday, people are like, oh, you're everywhere. And I'm just like, yeah, thank you. Where's Shaz? But the funny thing is I'm not everywhere. It seems like I am, because I've got to a point where people tag me in things, or they'll reshare and this and that. But that's good. You want to be omnipresent. You want to be front of mind when people think property finance, right? Secondly, about people who don't build personal brands, you might be because you're shy, don't want to be on camera, you think you're awkward. And that's me, right? I'm not very forward about that. But I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I was at an event with a chap called Shaz Ahmed. Mm-hmm. His was about raising finance, but it was about personal brand as well. And he was like, look, guys, if you're worried about how you look, how you sound, he went, simply get over yourself. Other people's opinion of that, of all that, is none of your business. Yeah. If you're not seen, you're invisible. If you're not visible, you are invisible. Yeah. And that stuck with me.
I love that.
And I was like, the other thing that stuck with me quite recently, there's a sales trainer called Daniel G on Instagram. And he's like, look, when you start a business or you get into self-employed, any part of that business that you don't enjoy, so social media, don't enjoy it, then just treat it like part of your job. Yeah. Because when you're in a job, you do everything they tell you to do. You don't ask questions.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense. So this leads me on to the defining moments segment of the podcast. Okay. So every guest who comes on, they bring in 3 pictures. Yes. We overlay them so the watchers at home can see what the picture is. And then you just discuss and explain why each one is a defining moment in your life to date. Okay. So let's start with the first defining moment picture. What is it and why is it defining?
So the first one is, I think, me sat at a desk recording content. And that was in 2019. I'd just been made, I just lost my job. And I remember posting it with a caption that the next 6 months I'm going to build my personal brand. Yeah. Back then I didn't know what exactly I was going to do and the strategies and all that, but it's a defining moment because looking back, I applied what I was going to do and here we are,
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we do to take a next step is if we put it in the public eye. You made a post saying you're going to build your personal brand. You told everyone. Yeah. You shouted it, I'm going to make a personal brand now. So because you've told everyone, you kind of got to follow through with it. Which is weird because I'm not that person to share my goals and visions normally, but I don't know why I did it then. Maybe because I had hit rock bottom in a way. It does work though. Yeah. It does work. Okay, so the second defining moment, what is it and why? So this would be me at the BBC, or in front of the BBC. And this is just more because I managed to get onto BBC radio. Mum was very proud, the family were happy, and I think, again, it just made me think that after all the work that I've put in, I'm that guy that they thought about when it came to talking about finance on the radio. And I asked the producer, I was like, how come you reached out to me? Yeah. And she said, you've been on our radar for quite a while. We just need to find the right time. Yeah. And here we are. So it just shows, people are watching all the time. That's sick, that is. You never know who's coming across your account. Mm-hmm. And juggernaut like BBC, you being on there and representing your business on there, that's huge. Yeah. And I've been on it then, and then they reached out again the year after. Yeah. And again, I was like, okay, that means I'm still that guy. Yeah, of course. Because was it radio or TV? It was radio. Yeah, radio. So obviously you had your handles, you told them your handles and stuff. So did you get much engagement and sort of inquiries from being on there? You know what, James? Yes, but for me, it's not all about inquiries. A lot of it's just brand. Yeah. Just brand. As in, I can say I've been on the BBC. Yeah. I can post that picture. That's a flex, to be fair. It's a flex. It's brand, it's leverage. Yeah. Because not everyone can do it. Exactly. And especially mortgage brokers. Yeah. How many mortgage brokers can say that? So for me, a lot of it isn't purely just lead gen. It's about brand. Okay, so the third defining moment picture, what is it and why? So this is me actually sat in a coffee shop in Elan Cafe, actually. And it's the day or the week after I set my business. So I was in Elan, setting up Elan, talking about Elan, doing content about Elan. And I've set up the business, not look back. And I think it's been a good journey. I've built a good reputation. People usually know who I am before I get into a room, which is great.
And yeah, I think, you know what it is, you join the dots backwards. You get to a certain point and you look back and say, oh, that made sense because these things happened, and yeah.
It's like a domino effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like if you never frequently visited that Elan coffee shop, the business wouldn't be called that for one, and you may not have sat down and started that whole journey.
Yeah, I actually messaged him back. I was like, are you going to sue me for the names? I was like, no, of course not.
Well, I don't think they can, you know, if it's in a different industry.
Exactly. No one's going to confuse coffee shop or finance.
Yeah, so the fact that you sat there and, you know, you felt inspiration from being in that coffee shop, and then this is where you are now, obviously the successful business, the successful personal brand, you do have a little bit to thank them for, I guess.
I will, yeah.
Maybe they get a percentage of all your brokers.
Don't give me any ideas.
I'm joking. All right, so if there was one piece of advice that you could go back and give your younger self, say you were a teenager between like 16 and 20, let's say, what would you say to them and why?
I would say to stop worrying so much, because I still am a worrier, but don't worry so much, but also take action earlier.
Yeah.
I tend to think of a great idea, think about it too long, act on it, and it works out.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, I could have done it sooner, because it generally 9 times out of 10 always works out. I think that's the advice. 9 times out of 10, you'll be fine.
Yeah, procrastination kills more businesses than like failure does, probably, I guess.
Procrastination, but also thinking, what will other people think?
Yeah.
No one cares.
Yeah, literally. And the only people who seem to have a lot to say about someone starting a business or starting a new journey, doing something, even training, it's always someone who isn't doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And they say you'll never get judgment or critique, like negative, like really bad negative comments from someone who's doing what you're trying to do.
From above, yeah, they ain't got time. They're busy working on their businesses. But you know what? It's also been good. Like again, doing the content thing. It's not me. I'm shy, awkward, but you have to do it. It's part of my job.
Yeah.
And I'd always worry what my friends gonna think. My OG friends, my WhatsApp group, what they're gonna think. But I won them over. Like they love it now, and they're like, Shaz, you know, that isn't you, but we're proud of you for doing it. So.
Yeah. Well, they always say they laugh first and then they clap when they start seeing success. You know. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the Capable Minds podcast, and I wish you every success with Elan Property Finance and everything you do in the future. Where can people find you on socials if they want to? Oh, sorry, this camera. If they want to follow you and make any inquiries, maybe
they have to ask the magic question, which is, where's Shaz?
Where's Shaz? And so it's at Where's Shaz on Instagram. Everywhere. Oh, literally, there you go. Heard it here first. Where's Shaz? As always, like, share and follow to help us grow our channel, and I'll see you on the next one.
Capable Minds Podcast.